Here's something wild. For the first 150 years of America, there was nothing, no law, no rule, nothing in the Constitution stopping a president from running for a third term, or a fourth, or a 10th. It wasn't a law that stopped them. It was a tradition. One guy started it, everybody followed it. And then one guy broke it. And that's exactly why we ended up with the 22nd Amendment. Let's start with the plain text because it's shorter than you'd think. Ratified in 1951, the 22nd Amendment says no person can be elected president more than two. Full stop. There's a second part people forget. If you become president partway through someone else's term, say a VP stepping in after a death or resignation, and you serve more than 2 years of that term, you can only be elected once more yourself. Serve less than 2 years of that leftover term, and you get the full 2 elections. So the max, in a very rare edge case, is about 10 years in office. But for basically every president since, it's simple. 2 elected terms, and you're done. No exceptions, no extensions, no matter how popular you are. Now here's where it gets interesting, because for a century and a half, none of this was written down. George Washington could have been president for life. People wanted him to be. Instead, after 2 terms, he walked away and went home to Mount Vernon. He didn't explain it as a constitutional requirement, because it wasn't one. He just thought it was the right thing to do, and he worried a president who never left office would start looking a lot like a king. Every president after him followed that same unwritten rule. Some wanted more. Treaty. Ulysses S. Grant flirted with a 3rd term. Theodore Roosevelt actually ran for one in 1912 and lost. But the 2-term tradition held for over 150 years, purely on the honor system. Then came Franklin D. Roosevelt. FDR was elected in 1932 in the middle of the Great Depression, and by the time his 2nd term was ending in 1940, the country was staring down a Second World War. A lot of Americans looked at that situation and decided this wasn't the moment to swap presidents on principle. So FDR ran for a 3rd term and won. Then, in 1944, with the war still raging, he ran for a 4th term and won that too. He died just a few months into that 4th term, in April 1945, having been president for over 12 years straight. FDR's 4 terms didn't sit well with a lot of people, especially Republicans, who'd watched a Democrat hold the presidency for over a decade. In 1946, Republicans won control of Congress for the first time in nearly 20 years, and one of their first moves was making sure no president could ever do what FDR did again. In 1947, Congress passed the proposed amendment and sent it to the states. That's how amending the Constitution works. 2/3 of the House and Senate have to approve it, and then 3/4 of the states have to ratify it. It's designed to be hard. This is the constitutional process for permanent, lasting change. It took nearly 4 years for enough states to sign on. Minnesota became the 36th state to ratify it in February 1951, pushing it over the 3/4 threshold, and the 22nd Amendment officially became part of the Constitution. Interesting twist. Some critics called it a grudge amendment, a Republican Congress essentially punishing a dead Democratic president after the fact, since FDR himself could no longer be affected by it. Supporters said it wasn't personal at all. It was about protecting the country from the kind of power concentration Washington had warned against in the first place. Both things can be true. This isn't just history class trivia. The 22nd Amendment shapes American politics every single election cycle. It's the whole reason we have the term lame duck president. Once a president wins that second term, everyone in Washington knows the clock is running out, and it changes how much leverage they have for the rest of their time in office. It's also stayed relevant in a very current way. In recent years, there's been real public debate, from lawmakers, commentators, and even a sitting president, about whether the amendment should be repealed or worked around. And here's the thing, those conversations tend to go nowhere fast, because repealing it requires that same 2/3 of Congress, 3/4 of states process that made it law in the first place. That bar is intentionally almost impossible to clear. So here's the thing I keep coming back to. For a century and a half, the 2-term limit wasn't law. It was just one man's example, followed out of respect. It took the exact scenario that tradition was designed to prevent, one leader staying in power far longer than anyone expected, to finally turn it into permanent, written law. Sometimes the strongest rules in a democracy aren't the ones anyone had to write down. They're the ones everybody just agreed to follow, until eventually somebody didn't.